Have you ever seen a huge, ambitious project just fizzle out before it even begins? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're digging into the story of Ghana Airlines, a dream that was supposed to put a new national carrier in the skies, but instead, it never even left the tarmac. So what happened? All right, just look at this. It really says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have the big promise from 2022, a brand new airline, Ghana Airlines, up and running in 2023. Sounds great, right? But then, flash forward to 2024, and the reality? The whole thing is called dead on arrival. Oof. So how on earth do you go from a major national announcement to a total failure in just 2 years? Let's get into it. Okay, so before we get to why it all fell apart, we've got to understand what the plan was. What was this big dream? What was the actual strategy that was supposed to get Ghana's own airline flying high again? So who was behind this whole thing? Well, you had three main players. First, the government of Ghana, obviously. They picked a company called Ashanti Airlines to actually run the airline. Now, Ashanti is part of the Despite Group, which is a huge, well-known conglomerate in Ghana. And for the money, they brought in the Zodist Group, a UK firm that backs these kinds of big projects. I mean, you look at that on paper, and it seems like a pretty strong lineup, right? And the plan for the airline itself? It was smart. They weren't trying to do everything at once. The idea was to roll it out in phases. Start small with flights inside Ghana, then expand to neighboring countries, and then go for the big ones, long-haul flights to major hubs like London Heathrow and New York. This wasn't some small-time operation. They were thinking globally from day one. So you've got the partners, you've got the plan. Everything seems set. But then the launch date, June 2023, it just came and went. Nothing. Silence. And it turns out, if you were looking closely, there were some massive red flags on the runway from the very beginning. Which really brings us to the main question, right? With all this planning and all this government backing, what was the one critical thing, the one massive problem that stopped this whole project in its tracks? What was the deal breaker? And here it is. The whole thing, the entire project, came down to this one single issue. Ashanti Airlines, the company picked to run the show, didn't actually have the license it needed to operate an airline. It's called an Airline Operator's Certificate, or an AOC, and without that, you can't fly. Period. Now, get this. This wasn't some last-minute glitch like they forgot to file some paperwork. The number you need to remember here is 6. For 6 whole years, before they were even chosen for this project, Ashanti Airlines had been trying to get this exact license, and failing. So, yeah, this wasn't a new problem. It was a huge, pre-existing condition, you could say. And this quote from an insider really pulls back the curtain on what was happening. It basically says the aviation authority, the people who give out the licenses, they weren't going to lower their standards. They weren't budging. So the government allegedly said, okay, if you won't bend the rules, then you need to sit with them and basically hold their hand through the process. I mean, that suggests a ton of pressure to make this happen, even with the obvious problems. Well, with that kind of stuff going on behind the scenes, you just knew it wasn't going to stay quiet forever. It was really only a matter of time before the whole thing fell apart. And by 2024, that's exactly what happened. And the final word on this? It came from someone inside the National Airline Committee, and wow, they did not mince words. They called it dead on arrival. The reason? The chosen partner had no aircraft, no license, and not enough financial muscle. I mean, from their point of view, it was doomed from the start. A total non-starter. So what happened next was pretty predictable. The committee in charge just completely lost confidence in the deal. They basically hit the eject button, pulled the plug on the whole thing with Ashanti Airlines, and went right back to square one, looking for a new partner. This time, presumably one that could, actually fly a plane legally. But here's the thing about this story. It's not over. The dream of a national airline for Ghana didn't just disappear when this deal fell apart. A new administration is now in place, and guess what? They're trying to revive it. And to really get why this is such a big deal, you have to look at the timeline. This isn't just about a failed project in 2024. Ghana hasn't had its own national airline since way back in 2010. Think about that, over a decade. So this recent collapse, it's just the latest chapter in a really long, drawn-out story. And this new task force, well, it's the next attempt to finally write a happy ending. This time, though, it seems like they're trying to do things differently. The new task force has a very clear, very structured plan, a step-by-step mandate. They're looking at everything from the overall business strategy to, and this is the important part, overseeing regulatory compliance. That was the huge sticking point last time. Then they'll move on to getting planes, hiring staff, planning routes. It feels much more methodical, like a real ground-up rebuild. So that leaves us with the big question, doesn't it? We've seen the ambition, we've seen the political push, and we've seen a pretty spectacular failure because of some really basic oversights. So now, with a new team and a new, more careful approach, you have to wonder, after all this time, after more than a decade of turbulence on the ground, can this national dream for Ghana finally take flight?